Welcome to Envisioned Broadcasting Radio, your station for empowerment, music, and talk radio. EB Radio presents Empower Hour with Jaresha. A show that shares the stories behind the journeys of leaders, influencers, and motivators. The Empower Hour with Jaresha begins now.
Ashley Blanshaw is a singer, songwriter, solo music goddess, motivational speaker, activist, and advocate for mental health awareness, and author. She has written 2 books. You can get physical copies of both of her books, My Journey to Recovery and Also Inspirational with Ashley Blanshaw on Amazon.com. Ashley's 3rd solo music album, Ashley #Unfiltered Part 2 and other solo music albums can be found on United Masters, Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, and SoundCloud, and Ashley Blanshaw. Follow along on social media at Ashley's Facebook page, Ashley Blanshaw, Instagram, at AshleyLove509 Clubhouse, at AshleyLove595, and also Twitter, at I am Ashley Blanche.
Good evening, amazing people. Welcome to Empower Hour with Jaresha. I am your host, Jaresha Moore-Smith, and it is another amazing Wednesday. And if this is your first time tuning into the show, I am so happy that you're tuning in this evening. I want you to know that I believe that you have the power to be great, do great, and have great. You just have to be willing to unleash your greatness and take action. So on this show, I speak with leaders, motivators, and influencers who want to share their stories and journeys to empower the world for growth and success. And tonight, similar to how I've done in the past, I just simply want to thank you all, my listeners, for the continued support each and every week and for tuning in every single week at the same time and the same place. So on this show, every single week, I actually share some kind of empowerment quote that we are pondering on how it can really help us and empower us for growth and success. And so for this week, you guys, we're going to talk about fear. Fear, and we're not just going to talk about it, but I really want to dive into how to turn fear into action. But before we jump in and truly feel all empowered for how we can turn fear into action, let's really talk about this fear thing, y'all. Because at the end of the day, we all have fear, okay? Fear is universal. It crosses all kinds of boundaries. So race, culture, religion, generations, we all feel fear. We have all experienced it at some point in our lives. Most of us are still experiencing some kind of fear in our life, right? So let's really dive into some of the facts that we know about this fear thing, right? As I mentioned, we know that it crosses across all kinds of generations. I have experienced fear, my children, generations prior, my great grandparents, and so on and so forth, right? We've all experienced fear. Our fears change with the time in which we live, but every single generation has fears. We all have fears, right? So fears are generational. They're also from an individual basis. Every person has something they're afraid of. I'm sure that right now, as you listen, you can say you may have a fear of public speaking. You may have a fear of insects, or fear of being lonely, or fear of having financial problems, or the fear of not being success, right? None of us are immune to fear. We all have fear. So I hope you right now are not saying, you know what, I don't have fear. I feel like I am fearless. And we say that, I know I've said that as well, that we are fearless, right? However, at the end of the day, we all experience fear in some way, shape, or form. You experience fear. The one thing I want to also just hone in on is the fact that when we think about fear and truly think about that and how much fear really wreaks havoc on our lives. So fear is very much destructive. Okay? Fear is destructive, okay? So let's talk about some of the destructive effects of how fear truly, just comes into our life. And if you ask me, just it can really turn your life upside down in so many different ways. So let's talk a little bit more about what that looks like from a destructive standpoint. So I know that when I've experienced fear in the past, no matter how much we try to avoid experiencing that fear, you can't avoid, what you're afraid of. Um, it just it's impossible. We know the fear is just something that's going to happen as we move forward. It's one of those things that keep us stagnant. And so fear, one of the effects of fear in our life is truly the inaction, because it paralyzes us, right? How many of us can actually say that we have been paralyzed? I know that there has been times in my life with things that have happened over the years that I truly feel like fear has not just paralyzed me, but immobilizes it has immobilized me. I know it's probably done the same thing to you as well. And I think back to, a year and a half ago with this whole crisis, the whole COVID thing, and how much fear we experienced just across everyone in the whole entire world was really fearful. And that is destructive. So when you think about fear and the destruction that it causes in your life, if it keeps you stagnant, if it keeps you from moving, then that is destruction. That is not action that you need to be taking. So fear is going to, come into our lives, and has come into our lives and cause that paralyzing and immobilizing. And who wants to feel stagnant? I talk about making boss moves all the time. And when you're making boss moves, it's not about being paralyzed. It's not about being stagnant. It's not about being in that comfort zone, right? So we want to step out of that. We want to turn that fear into action. So one of the other destructive effects, really, of fear is how it divides our thinking. So fear truly, truly is going to remove that focus from our life. Think about the things that you have been fearful about, and how you worry, and how that fear divides our mind and prevents us from really concentrated thinking. And so you lack that focus. And again, I can think about so many different things that, I have been fearful of in the course of my life, and how it literally, it helps you lose that focus. So it goes back to that divided thinking. And so one of the other things too that, as I'm thinking about this whole fear thing and some of the destruction that it causes, is it keeps us in isolation. Now, this is so good, because when you think about just everything that has happened, and again, going back to COVID, and how we were all isolated, many of us are still isolated. When you are fearful, you withdraw from others, right? You withdraw from others in the effort not to have those fears exposed. There is a quote that, and on this show, you're going to hear me say that we love quotes on this show. So there is a quote that says, fear is that little dark room where negatives are developed. And if you think about that, that is so true, because when you're fearful of something, it keeps you in isolation. So I even think about the fears that come from people wanting to move forward with their dreams, move forward with their goals. That fear keeps you isolated. It keeps you stagnant. It keeps you right in that place, in that comfort zone that you're so used to, that you're so scared of stepping out of. Fear keeps you there. That is destructive. That is a destructive effect of fear in your life. One of the other destructive ways is procrastination. And I know that, it's that dreadful P word, right? Because so many of us procrastinate from a day to day procrastination. The fear of not knowing, the fear of the unknown, the fear of having to really face whatever that thing is head on. So because you don't want to face it, you find yourself delaying what you're scared to do, delaying what you're scared to jump into. That whole saying of, we want to jump in and build our wings on the way down. Well, when you jump and build your wings on the way down, you're doing that in the midst of fear, in the midst of being scared. What I will tell you about procrastination is the only person worse than a quitter is the person that is afraid to start. The person that's afraid to begin, that keeps putting off things and saying, you know what, I'm going to do it next week, or I'll launch that business, or I'll start writing that book next year. Why keep putting things off? What are you scared of? We truly have to learn how to face those fears head on. And I'm going to talk more about this here in a little bit, but we have to learn how to face those fears. In order for you to turn that fear into action, you have to stop procrastinating. I know it's easier said than done, but you have to start procrastinating and taking that step. And I don't know if you've heard of the book called Eat That Frog, but Eat That Frog is an amazing book. I can't think of who the author is right now, but it's truly an amazing book that encourages you to stop procrastinating and eat that frog, meaning do the thing that you don't want to do. So if you are finding yourself that you're scared to tackle a task or scared to do something such as pursue your dreams, eat the frog. Take baby steps. You don't have to take these huge steps towards pursuing something in life. You just have to be willing to take a step, right? So take that step. One of the other things, or one of the other effects that we truly find ourselves in that is destructive when it comes to fear is how we have that misused energy. So we know that fear I'm very much all about the energy, the negative energy that comes in, and making sure you stay away from that negative energy, and always invite in that positive energy, and just making sure you continue to have that positive energy from a day to day. But fear is an energy as well. Fear is an energy. And I have to bring up something that I had heard from John Maxwell, where he compares the fear that we go through in our life to literally gunning the engine when your car is in neutral. So all of us that have cars have gunned the engine, revving up that engine when your car is in neutral. And what does it do? It makes lots and lots of noise, but there is no accomplishment. That is fear. So fear causes us to make all of this, all these emotions and these feelings to come in with being scared of whatever that thing is. And at the end of the day, nothing is accomplished besides the fact that we're worried. The fact that we're scared of moving forward, or scared of being and, doing the things that we truly want in our life. So truly, it's all about how we respond to fear, right? And I like to believe that we respond in a few different ways. So when it comes down to fear, we either try to avoid the fears in our life, and it's hard to avoid any kind of fear that you may be facing. So even that fear of public speaking, and you can avoid it and keep on avoiding it. That fear of perhaps being around other people. So you can avoid it and try to avoid it as much as possible. But that's not a good way to really respond to fear. And then what about when we just want that fear that's in our life just to disappear, like it's, like poof, be gone? That's not a good way to respond to fear either. The best way to respond to fear is for us to face our fears head on. Face whatever that fear is head on and work towards overcoming them. That is the most healthiest response. And I dare say that it is the most courageous response as well. When it comes down to, truly dealing with fear, I know that in my own journey, and I'm sure so many of us can say that no matter how hard you try to avoid it, it's never going to go away. As I talked about some of the destruction of fear, you're either going to become paralyzed or you're going to feel defeated. And I have definitely felt defeated before. It's not a good feeling. I know that, if you are feeling this right now or have felt that, it's not a good feeling. And, we find ourselves looking for that quick fix or how do we deal with this? How do we deal with this fear? Well, I'm going to tell you that the only way that we deal with it is by facing it and facing it head on to overcome it. We have to be willing to face the fear and overcome it. And I truly believe that when we do that, it shows the confidence. It shows, us being courageous because we want to conquer that fear, right? But we have to understand that in order to conquer that fear, you have to do something. You have to take action. You have to get up and go out. You have to get up and do something in order to overcome, in order to turn that fear into action. It requires something. It requires an action on your part. So I'm going to give you 9 actions that you can take to face and overcome those fears, because ultimately we want to turn those fears into action. And the first thing that you want to do is discover the foundation. So look at why do you have those feelings? Why do you have those emotions? What is the basis of your fears, right? A lot of us don't even take the time to drill down and, really pick apart and go through that discovery phase as to why we have those fears. And I dare say to you that any fear that I've ever had on my journey, that when you when you overcome it, I always look back on it and say, you know what? It wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. So we have to be willing to really discover the foundation of our fears, and learn over the years not to stay in that place of fear and or stay or really reside in fear, because of the fact that it really truly causes a destruction, and that destruction is wreaking havoc in our lives if we choose to stay in that place, if we choose to stay in that comfort zone. Because truly I feel that when we're fearful and in that place and really residing in a place of fear, that it's because we're not willing to step outside. We are saying, you know what? I have this fear. I want it to just magically disappear. I want to, I want to conquer it. However, if you're not willing to step outside of that, if you're not willing to take a step outside of your comfort zone, then you're not willing to face your fears, and you're not willing to turn those fears into action. Which brings me to the next action, which is you need to admit your fears. Okay, so that goes along with discovery, and then not just with that discovery phase, you have to say, you know what? I am truly, truly scared of launching that business. I am very scared of failing if I write that book. I am scared that I'm not going to be successful if I do whatever it is that, you truly want to do. And I'm just throwing some things out there, but you have to be willing to admit to your fears. And once you admit them, you can realize that you have them. So it's all about taking ownership, right? Taking ownership that, you know what, I am scared. So, and I'll tell you a little, again, a little story about myself. Before I launched this show, I was terrified. I was like, what in the world? I even got up to the point where I was getting ready to start having my shows and launching my show, and I was absolutely fearful because of the fact that I was scared that I was going to mess up. I was scared of making mistakes. So I had to admit my fear. I had to face it head on, right? It's something about owning up to those fears and owning up to those failures, because in life we're all going to have failures, and those failures help us deal with the fear, right? They help us deal with the fear of of making them. So we have to truly admit our fears in order for us to turn that fear into action. Absolutely, we have to do that. One of the things I want to mention, because I truly feel like when we talk about fear, and I kind of mentioned this already, but I think there's a huge misconception that courage equals a lack of fear, and that's just simply not true. Actually, I believe the opposite is true. When you have the courage, to admit that you have that fear, you are facing your fear, right? You're admitting and facing your fear, and that's not the lack of fear. So when you are hearing this right now and you're saying, you know what, I do have some fears, and maybe you haven't taken a step to acknowledge the fact that you have fears that you need to deal with, knowing that you're facing it, and maybe, let me back up a little bit, because maybe you are at a point where you said, you know what, I have these fears and I'm going to deal with them. I am dealing with them. That is courage. That is courage. Courage is admitting and facing your fears. And it's not the lack of fear, because as I shared before, we all have fears. They're not going away. We have fears that are just going to be here. We just have to learn how to deal with them, right? We have to learn how to, take these fears that we have in our lives and, collect all the information, the data, the emotions, and the feelings that go along with those fears, and then turn that into action. And then guess what? Jump and build your wings on the way down. Do it afraid. Sometimes we have to be willing to turn off those fears and just keep pushing forward. Because a lot of us have become paralyzed and don't want to move forward because whatever that thing is that we're scared of doing, turn off them fears and make those boss moves, as I like to say. So the next action that we want to take is we have to, after we've admit it, and then we need to accept the fear and then understand that it's a process, It's a process, and when we accept the fear, it is as though it's the price of the progress. So how many times do we think that our fears will go away and we can just get rid of them? I'm sure I've said that throughout this evening, and I'm sure that we wish that this would happen. They're not going to go away. However, if you want to grow, understand that you will encounter fears the rest of your life. You're going to encounter fears the rest of your life. And many of us have to come to grips with that, right? But, when we come to grips with that, we have to understand that there is good news that goes along with that. Because each victory over fear, each and every victory that you have over fear, when you overcome the fear, adds to your confidence and helps you overcome the fears again and again and again and again. Again, it's a process. It happens over and over and over again. But the more you overcome, the more you face those fears and have that victory, it adds to your confidence level. It boosts up your confidence to be able to handle that next fear that comes in, right? It helps you. I'll tell you that going back to the radio show. So before I launched the radio show, I was very much in this place. I was very fearful. Although I decided I was going to jump in, build my wings on the way down, I was still very fearful. But I tell you what, after that second show, my confidence level continued to build. And I was like, you know what? This wasn't that bad. Here it was. Some of us worry. Some of us have all kinds of emotions and feelings that's tied to whatever that fear is, whether it's public speaking, whatever it may be for you, whether it's doing a live on Facebook or Instagram. We have all these different fears and all these emotions and feelings that's attached to it. But once you go and jump and build your wings on the way down, once you go and do it afraid, you realize that it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. And guess what? The more you do it, the more your confidence builds. Yes. The fourth action is you're going to develop a burning desire within you. Now, I talked about burning desire the last episode. So if you haven't heard that episode, make sure you go back and listen to the last show, because burning desire, oh my goodness, I talked about burning desire and also TAGR, which is Think and Grow Rich, which is an amazing book as well. Burning desire, you have to develop that burning desire within you. See, the desire is going to propel you to go and move and make those boss moves where you're afraid to go and to do what you're scared to do. If you have a desire that is a burning desire that's so deep, then you're gonna focus. Your focus is gonna shift and not be so concerned with whatever that thing is, that emotion that's attached to that fear, but you're gonna confront it. You're going to have a bigger goal, and it's going to be bigger than whatever that fear is. And that means you're going to keep pushing forward. See, what you have to understand is that person. So say, for instance, if you had a fear of flying, that person afraid of flying decides with a burning desire. They are going to decide to confront it, because that fear is not as strong as that burning desire. Okay. And it's not because the fear has vanished, because it doesn't. But because of the fact that there may be a burning desire within them as to why they need to go get on that plane and fly somewhere. So it's when you have that burning desire. So for me, That burning desire was because of the fact that I wanted to be able to share my message with people all around the world. So that was why I pushed forward past those fears of not knowing anything about podcasts and radio. I pushed past those fears because of that burning desire to empower others for growth and success. That burning desire of my purpose and recognizing what I was called to do. So it developed that burning desire within you in order to help you overcome those fears and to turn those fears into action. The fifth point that I want to make is for you to focus on what you can control. So I think we get into so much trouble when we focus on things that are outside of our control, okay? We need to remember that, you can control your attitude, but you can't control the actions of others. You can control your schedule. Well, many of us can, your schedule. But there are circumstances, there are things that come your way that life throws you that is out of your control. We have to remember that it's not what happens to you, but what happens in you. It's not what happens to you, but what happens in you that truly counts for us. And so as you continue to overcome those fears and turn those fears into action, remember to focus only on the things that you can control. You can control your attitude, but not others' actions, okay? You cannot control people's circumstances, and many of us, we can't control our own, when life happens and we have those different circumstances that come into our lives. Life is going to happen. It's been happening to us. However, focus on the things that you can control. Focus on those things. The next action that I want to give you is we have to be willing to feed the right emotion and starve the wrong one. Now, we've talked about fear throughout the evening, and we have fear and we have courage. That is all within us, okay? So, are you feeding the right emotion? Why are you continuing to feed the fear that is within you? So we feed it with worry, we feed it with doubt, we throw all of these negative emotions in. And then it's almost like we drown out the fact that we can do something. We drown out the I can and I will. We drown out the positive side of whatever that thing is. We drown it out. So we have to be willing to feed the right emotion and starve the wrong one. When we feel fear but act anyway, we truly deprive the fear of the nourishment and strength that the impulse of the courage has inside of us. Think about that. Stop feeding your fears. Stop feeding your fears. We need to starve those fears that we have in our life. We need to starve those fears, the self-doubt, the negative self-talk. We need to starve all of that we have in our lives and start truly feeding the right emotions within ourselves. So I want to mention that in overcoming our fears, many of us focus on so many other things besides what we need to be focused on. And the next point that I truly want you to listen and take heed to is focusing on today. Focus on today. Now, we have all kinds of fears in our lives. And when you think about those fears in your life, those fears try to make us look at all of our problems, okay? All of the problems that we have all at once. From the problems from way back years ago, from yesterday, the problems today, the problems from next week. Why not? Why not simply focus on today? Focus only on today. Focus on today, what's right in front of you. Worrying, doubt, and everything else that we have a tendency to just let come in from a day to day about next week, the month from now, next year. Stop. Focus only on today. To be courageous, you have to focus only on today, because it's only it. If you think about it, it is the only thing that you have control over. You only have control over what happens today. And as I mentioned before, some of us don't even have control over that. But the things you can control, only focus on those things of today. By focusing only on what's right in front of us, it allows us to manage the risk, because we know we only have to deal with it one wave at a time. Now, the eighth action point that I want you to take heed to is to put some wins under your belt. Just like how how fear tends to breed more fear and courage leads to more courage. We have to be willing, to continue to put those wins, to continue to face more fears. So the fact of facing your fear is not a one-time thing. You're going to continue to face those fears. The more we face our fears, the more capable we begin to feel, and the more fears we are willing to face. So continue to face those fears and gain the strength and the courage and the confidence, because I promise you that with each experience, you will continue to be able to look that fear in the face and know that you can do it, that you can move forward, that you got this, right? The last action that I want you to take heed to is doing it now. Now, throughout the evening, I have talked about jumping and building your wings on the way down. I want you to write that down somewhere and continue to practice that every single day. So you have to be willing to take that jump, and you have to be willing to take that jump now. Okay? You have to be willing. Often all it takes to conquer a fear is to change our focus and try some of the things that I've mentioned. Are you willing to try it? Are you willing to jump and build your wings on the way down? As we realize what's true and focus on what we can control, the fear naturally weakens and fades. But there are those times when no amount of thinking can overcome the fear. In fact, the more we think in those kind of situations, the more fearful we become. And the solution is action. The only solution is action. So each one of those points that I've given you tonight, each one are action items that you can take, that you should take, in order for you to overcome, or in order for you to face those fears that you're dealing with in your life, so that you no longer remain paralyzed, so that you no longer doubt what you're capable of doing. I believe that you have within you what it takes to be, do, and have what you want in life. You just have to be willing to, one, step outside of those fears, and say, you know what, I can do this. I'm going to do this. I've talked about I can and I will. And again, if you have not heard the I Can and I Will show, please listen to it. Because I truly, truly know that you have within you what it takes to overcome your fears. These are just action items for you to take to move forward, for you to make those boss moves that I know you can make. So as I close this evening, I just really want you to take heed of the actions that you need to take in order for you to be, do, and have what you want in life, in order for you to jump and build your wings on the way down. You will gain strength, courage, and confidence by simply facing your fears. You have to tell yourself that you can do it. You can do it. You were created to face those fears. You were created for greatness. And in order for you to let your greatness shine, that requires you to take a step, to take a leap, to overcome whatever fear that you have been struggling with or dealing with. I know you can do it. I know you can do it. So I thank you so much for tuning in to Empower Hour with Jaresha this evening. If you are interested in starting your own show or being a guest on the show, to share your amazing story and journey, to equip, encourage, and empower others for growth and success, please visit envisionedbroadcasting.com to learn more. Please tune in next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard on EB Radio. You can also download the EB Radio app if you have an Apple phone or if you have an Android. Just go into your Apple Store or your Google Play Store and look for the EB Radio logo. But tune in next Wednesday where you will hear an amazing story and journey from another leader, influencer, and motivator. Until next time, stay safe and be blessed. See you next Wednesday.
Thank you for listening to the Empower Hour with Jaresha, where Jaresha speaks with leaders, influencers, and motivators who share their journey in personal and professional growth, empowerment tips, lessons learned, and keys of success that will empower you to your best self. Follow Jaresha on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Jaresha Moore, and visit www.empoweronpurpose.com. Remember to be intentional and be empowered and have a great day on purpose.